Video game adaptations. Whether it's video games, movies, or shows, over the last 10 years, we've seen a boom of content adapted from video games. From Amazon's Fallout series to HBO's The Last of Us to Netflix Arcane and other banging animated adaptations like the Castlevania series and most recently the Devil May Cry series. Back in December though, Amazon Prime Video decided they wanted to get in on the action. They wanted to release a rather interesting project known as Secret Level, an animated anthology series with 15 episodes telling 15 different unique stories set in 15 different video games. However, what sounded like a really cool idea on paper was surprisingly problematic in practice. Hello everyone, I am Finn. Welcome back to FinnFilms. Join me today as we are discussing the highs and the lows of Secret Level. So as I've said in countless videos now, the video game adaptation, whether it's a movie or a show, animated or live action, is very much the kind of holy grail for movie studios and streaming companies alike. Again, I've touched on this topic multiple times, most recently in this video I made over The Last of Us HBO series. In short though, streaming companies view video games and anime franchises, these adaptations, as basically a cheat code, a free money glitch, if you will, to get access to a massively loyal fan base. Now, over the years, it's undeniable that these adaptations, whether video games or anime, have definitely gotten better. I mean, we are a long way off from the likes of like the Doom movie, Uncharted, Dragon Ball Evolution, and Netflix's Death Note, just to name a few. For me personally, the main thing I want to see whenever I see an adaptation being made of one of my favorite video games or anime is for the show or movie to be loyal and respectful to the original source material. Whether that's in how they are portraying the world of said video game or the just general tone that the game has altogether, hence why I think the Devil May Cry anime adaptation on Netflix most recently released is pretty good. Again, overall, streaming services have definitely roughly kind of figured out how to do this well, especially after the last 30 years of butchering some of our favorite video game and anime franchises. Again, look no farther than Amazon's Fallout series, HBO's The Last of Us, Netflix's Castlevania, or Devil May Cry series, or even Arcane, to see examples of video game adaptations that are done well, video game adaptations that actually get it. Adaptations that understand that the fans of these video games want to see something that is faithful and respectful, something that represents the series that they love, not Jack Black as Minecraft Steve.
I am Steve.
So then, this brings me to one of Amazon's most recent attempts at adapting video game franchises to, well, an animated world. After the monumental giga success of their Fallout live-action series, Amazon have once again decided to return to the video game well, back to that video game adaptation money pit, with the release of their animated video game adaptation series, Secret Level, in December of 2024. Secret Level is a 15-episode video game anthology series. 15 episodes, 15 different games, 15 unique stories in these popular video game franchise worlds like Warhammer, New Worlds, Mega Man, Sifu, and Dungeons & Dragons, just to name a few. Now, on paper, I have to say, this sounds like it would be a pretty good idea. And actually, we've already seen a similar project do really well. A project by Disney, of all companies, that came out in 2021 called Star Wars Visions. Star Wars Vision was an animated anthology series where different animation studios, in Season 1 they were anime studios, created original animated short films inspired by the Star Wars universe. Again, Star Wars anime, need I say more? So on paper, a video game anthology series like Secret Level sounds great. It sounds like it would work in the same way that Star Wars Vision worked extremely well. But in execution though, there was a lot left to be desired. As I discussed in my video going over Secret Level Episode 1, the Dungeons & Dragons episode, many of the problems with Secret Level as a whole is that the original stories feel less like stories and more kind of like glorified cutscenes or even video game cinematics. And this really boils down to one major thing: time. Or more lack thereof. The longest episodes of Secret Level are around 15 minutes long, that is from the start of the intro to the credits running. With the shortest episode being the Mega Man episode, coming in at, I shoot not, 5 minutes long. 5 fucking minutes, dude. How are they gonna do my boy Mega Man like that? That should be illegal. Can we really call 5 minutes of animation an episode, let alone an original story? Because these episodes are so short, most, if not all of them, fail to establish any kind of meaningful story, let alone characters. The episodes simply relying on kind of bare bones plot and characters that fans of the video game series may recognize, and then loads of action and fight scenes to basically carry the entirety of the episodes. Like here, let me give you the plot of the Mega Man story in like a handful of sentences. Dr. Wily has reprogrammed robots to destroy the city. One of Dr. Light's robots named Rock, aka Mega Man, wants to defend it, but Dr. Light wants to send in Bomb Man instead. Bomb Man boots up but is hijacked. Rock fights him, getting his arm blown off, but he puts up an ice canister, attaches it to his arm, and then blows him up. Dr. Light agrees to let Rock fight, giving him his classic Mega Man armor. The end. So basically, it's a 5-minute Mega Man origin story that was going really well, and it actually had some relatable characters. Those characters even got a little bit of character development and progression, and then they just cut it off like the biggest tease I've ever seen in my life. Like, why the fuck does Mega Man, one of the most iconic video game franchises of all time, get a 5-minute episode when Concord, a game that is arguably one of the biggest flops of all time, a game that shut down literally after only being live for 2 weeks, gets a full 15-minute episode? Like, imagine if we extended this 5-minute Mega Man episode to, like, even 10 minutes. We spent a little more time introducing our characters, Rock and Dr. Light. We actually got to understand and see our villain, Dr. Wily, and then we spent the last 5 minutes on a dope action scene, letting Mega Man get to do all of his cool-ass Mega Man things and ultimately save the day. No, instead we got a rushed 5-minute origin story. And remember, this is supposed to be an original story that is set in a classic video game world. This feeling more like a glorified video game, like teaser promotional cinematic, like something you'd see when Blizzard is trying to sell you a new World of Warcraft expansion. And overall, this is how a lot of the episodes of Secret Level feel. They feel like a glorified cutscene. They feel like promotional material. And unironically, this is actually what a few of these episodes are.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
Many of these episodes are actually promo material meant to sell you a video game franchise, or at the very least promote a video game franchise, which to me is a bit insulting. No, I'm being serious. Literally episode 6 of Secret Level, the Pac-Man episode, specifically served as promotional material for its new upcoming game, Shadow Labyrinth, set to be released in July of 2025. A reimagination of Pac-Man as this dark, twisted, very fucked up world. Now look, I know that a lot of adapted media, especially video game shows or movies, are basically promotional material for the original franchise in some form or fashion. Arcane is probably the most obvious example of a video game animated series that is meant to promote the original game. However though, at least with Arcane, it is meant to be entertainment. It is meant to pay homage to the awesome game and the source material, the lore of the world. It's not just meant to be a way to sell skins for Riot Games. Like, on the surface, the Pac-Man episode seems really cool. It's this dark, edgy kind of reimagination of Pac-Man, but when you realize that it's literally just a glorified 9-minute cinematic promoting a game that hasn't even been released yet, there's something kind of gross about that. Like, Secret Level as a concept, at least the way that it seemed to me, was supposed to be a chance for fans of video game franchises to see their favorite franchise in a cool animated form, animated series. Like, for a lot of video game fans out there, this is like their dream come true in many ways. They get to see one of their favorite franchises that probably would never normally get any kind of adaptation for a show or a movie, but here they finally get one. So to me, seeing an episode that literally just serves as like a promo to hype up an oncoming game for a company to make money, it kind of pisses me the fuck off. And it sure does make me wonder what exactly Bandai Namco had to do for Amazon to get this episode made about their upcoming game. The sad thing is though, the Pac-Man episode isn't even the worst example of this. No, that award goes to episode 13 of Secret Level, the Concord episode. Now, for those of you who are unaware, Concord was a Sony Entertainment first-person shooter that released in 2024, and in my opinion, it is arguably the biggest video game flop of all time. Sony and this game's developers hyped this game up to the freaking moon. They spent 8 years developing it and millions of dollars, reports coming out saying the development cost of this game was somewhere around $400 million, which I refuse to believe that's true. Like, for some context, Star Wars The Force Awakens holds the record for the biggest movie budget of all time at the time of recording at $447 million. And according to Wikipedia, a game like The Last of Us Part 2's development costs somewhere around $220 million. So, yeah, I have my doubts that Concord cost Sony as much money as it cost Disney to make Star Wars The Force Awakens. Regardless of how much money Sony did end up spending, though, ultimately it was a waste, just like how Disney wasted their money on Star Wars Force Awakens. As Concord the game would launch on August 23rd, 2024, and then 2 weeks later shut down on September 6, 2024, refunding all copies of the game that were purchased and closing down the studio Firewalk, the studio developer that made the game. Apparently, these game devs were so far up their own ass, they were so far down their own hype train, one of them was reported to have said that this game was intended to be a kind of tentpole title for Sony as a whole, ultimately to expand it into a franchise like Star Wars. Well, it definitely ended up like a modern Star Wars, alright, straight up hot garbage. So if you've been paying attention so far, you might remember that I said Secret Level, the animated series, debuted in December of 2024. Meaning that the animated series released 3 months after Concord's absolutely abysmal release and then eventual shutdown. So then you might be asking yourself, why the fuck does one of the biggest video game flops of all time have an animated episode in Secret Level? Oh, and it gets worse. Not only does it have an episode, it's actually one of the longest episodes of the entire series at around 15 to 16 minutes long. And again, these motherfuckers gave Mega Man 5 minutes, dude. So obviously, Secret Level was very likely in development before Concord ultimately had its catastrophic crash and burn released. But the fact that they actually kept this episode in is hilarious to me. To me, though, it also serves as proof that this series as a whole very much was meant to be promotional material for Concord, for the game, and for its franchise. Of course, Amazon and Blur Studio had no idea that this game was going to crash and burn as hard as it did, and now they have egg on their face. But like, just stop and think for 1 second. Think of all of the really successful and popular game franchises out there that deserve to have a 15-minute animation episode of it in Secret Level. Do you know the horrible things I would do to have either a Darkest Dungeon animated original story in Secret Level or something like Hollow Knight? Horrible things. I would have taken anything over Concord. I mean, anything. They could have given me any Ubisoft trash game that has come out in the last 10 years, and I would have liked it more than this obvious promotional slop that was the Concord episode of Secret Level. So while yes, you can see that there was many problems with Secret Level, there was in fact a few things that I actually didn't like. Visually, each of these episodes is pretty aesthetically pleasing to look at. Yes, all of them use a very hyper-realistic CGI animation style. There is relatively low diversity of animation style overall, especially when you compare it to something like Star Wars Visions, but in general, all of the episodes do look really good. Even if you are someone who hates this hyper-realistic style, I do think that you have to acknowledge that it looks good. Several of these episodes are actually able to stand out as well as kind of accurate representations of the video games that they are adapting, and they also manage to tell some very interesting stories, especially when you consider it's a very shockingly short format to try to tell an interesting story. To me, the 2 episodes that kind of stand out as being the most interesting one-off original stories that are actually loyal to the original game and the kind of vibes of the game that they were adapted from are the Sifu episode and, shockingly, the New World episode. Sifu is a beat-em-up game from 2022 and was, in my opinion, the best game to come out in 2022. It follows a young man from a martial arts school who seeks revenge on those responsible for his father's death. The game's primary mechanic taking inspiration from many roguelike games, being this magical talisman. The talisman serving as the player's lives, resurrecting the player every time you die, but at an older age, giving the character access to more powerful attacks, but reducing their health as you grow older. Episode 2 of Secret Level, the Sifu episode, is largely inspired by the game's second stage, the Club, a stage that is regarded by the Sifu community as one of the best stages in the entire game. As we watch the main character progress through the club, dying multiple times and being revived as older and older versions of himself, ultimately making it to the boss, Sean. The episode ending on a cliffhanger as we see an old man sitting at a food stall where the episode began. It being revealed that this is the same young man we saw in the first few minutes of the episodes, now old and graying, having defeated Sean but dying many times in the process. What the Sifu episode lacks in terms of character progression and overall storytelling, it very much makes up for, in my opinion, in awesome action fight sequences. While I would have loved for this episode to be much longer and much more thought out and have a much more kind of cohesive narrative to it, I do have to say, considering the short amount of time each episode has, going down the intense action route, I think was the correct decision for the Sifu episode. Maybe I'm biased because I absolutely love this game, but to me, the Sifu episode of Secret Level was by far one of the best episodes of the entire series. And then that brings me to episode 3, the New World episode featuring Arnold fucking Schwarzenegger. So New World was a hyped MMORPG made by Amazon Games, released in September of 2021. The game set around a fantasy land known as Aeternum, where everyone who traveled to it becomes immortal. So then it's no surprise that Amazon Prime Video would give New World an episode, literally because Amazon Games made the game. Now, I did play New World a bit when it came out with some friends, and it was alright. But really, it wasn't that special in my opinion, especially in the massive world of MMORPGs. So I have to say, it honestly did take me genuinely by surprise when I came away from watching the New World Secret Level episode being kind of like, holy shit, that was pretty good. The episode follows King Aelstrom, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and his trusty one-arm advisor, Scaevola. The king planned to sail to Aeternum to conquer it with his army, but they all end up dying in a storm, leaving only Aelstrom and Scaevola alive. The two in a hilarious scene realizing that neither of them can leave this island nor die.
Aelstrom lives. I always said that I was destined to rule forever, but I never dared dream that I was speaking literally. Even death itself is humble before my radiant majesty. I seem to be immortal too.
Aelstrom decides to challenge the island's king, the ruler King Zima, in a duel of combat, where he is easily killed. Aelstrom reawakening, having been revived on the beaches of the island sometime later.
Yet, Aelstrom lives. Thank the gods that I'm whole again. I feared for an instant that I may be left half a man.
Aelstrom continues to try and challenge the king for his throne in different feats of combat skill and tactics, but he is easily defeated every single time. Aelstrom wondering how he could have easily been so outmatched when for his entire life he has always been the best. Now, throughout the episode, we see that Aelstrom very much treats Scaevola, his loyal servant, horribly, regularly making fun of him, abusing him, and just overall treating him like a horrible person.
What a blessing that I was not disfigured and crippled before we arrived in Aeternum. Like you were, Scaevola. Scaevola, who wipes his ass and eats his mush with the same hands.
Scaevola finally breaking and telling Aelstrom that he is a horrible king and that all of his subjects let him win in everything in the past. Aelstrom abandoning his only friend and loyal subject in anger, as the king climbs a mountain, making a deal with a powerful evil force for magical armor and weaponry. Once again challenging King Zima, where to no one's shock he is handily defeated. However, King Zima, growing tired and bored, decides to give Aelstrom the crown. Aelstrom running away down to the beach to put it on and celebrate his victory, only for him to realize that he is now all alone. Wanting to make things right, Aelstrom seeks the help of a merchant who teaches him blacksmithing, Aelstrom gifting Scaevola with a prosthetic arm made from the crown. The two men reconciling, Aelstrom finally humbled and recognizing Scaevola as his friend. This is how you tell a funny and emotional story with interesting, unique characters that actually have character progression, and it doesn't just feel like it was slapped together, let alone just a kind of glorified cinematic. Honestly, a large part of how good this episode was probably boils down to Arnold's hilarious performance as King Aelstrom, as this episode genuinely does have a lot of comedic, really funny moments. However, it's also very well knitted together by a very solid story of like human growth and friendship, making it probably the best episode of Secret Level overall. While yes, Secret Level does have a few bright spots in several of its episodes, ultimately, this kind of makes it feel worse. The fact that some of these episodes as a whole are really good, or at the very least have really cool action scenes, make it feel worse knowing that they will likely never be adapted to anything more than just a one-off animated episode. I mean, imagine, like, instead of a single 5 to 10 minute episode, these stories got their own series. Hell, I'd even take like 3 15-minute episodes per like story. To me, the fact that there are episodes that I actually liked and enjoyed makes it feel worse knowing that we are probably never going to see like the time devoted to make a full story that these episodes and these stories deserve. While in theory, I like the concept, the idea of Secret Level as an anthology series set around very popular video game franchises. However, in execution, it ultimately comes up short, largely due to the decision made to make the episodes themselves way too short. I said this in my other video over the Dungeons & Dragons episode of Secret Level, but I think several of the reviewers really put it well. Secret Level struggles to find satisfying stories for a short-form anthology series. Others saying, the show acts as a poorly written AI summary of massive tales. And really the fact that several of these episodes are literal promo works, promo material meant to sell you a product, makes it all the worse. At the end of the day, Secret Level is, to me, all sizzle and no substance. And it might as well be a group of glorified cinematic ads. As always, guys, with these videos, these are just my thoughts and opinions, so feel free to let me know yours in the comment section down below. Let me know what was your favorite episode of Secret Level, and do you think that Secret Level ultimately came up really short in the end? Can't wait to see what they do in Season 2. If you did enjoy this video or learn something new, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as that is the easiest way to support me, and it really does go a long way in putting these videos into the algorithm. If you did like this video, then why don't you check out some of my other videos on screen now, and as always, guys, I hope to see you in the next one. Stay safe out there. Until next time, peace, love, Adu.